you're able to join us this morning to celebrate this tremendous service and support you give the Metropolitan government and its residents. Metro's Mayor Service Awards celebrates our employees' milestones of significant, dedicated service and employment. When many people start a job in an organization, few can imagine growing a career that spans 30, 35, 40, 45, and even 50 years, and we have one of those today. This year, we have over 110 employees who have met these milestones. That is such a tremendous testament to your dedication, work ethic, and commitment to our community and city. With this kind of service and longevity, many of you have become like family to those of us here at Metro. You help our city run and our residents thrive, and help our community through challenges and triumphs. We are forever grateful for your courage, commitment, and leadership as you continue to give us all. As we continue our thanks and gratitude, I welcome my close personal friend, colleague, and long-term Metro employee, Ron Denton, to lead our invocation.
Good morning, everybody. Let's all stand. Are you glad to be here? Yes. Did you think you'd make it this far? I'm sure most of you all, like I was when I started, didn't think it'd last too long. And now I have become ancient of days up in my group. We're glad that you're here this morning. You need to be glad you're here this morning. You need to be thankful you woke up and you knew where you were this morning. There are some folks that didn't wake up, and there's some that woke up and is in the wrong place. This is a time of reflection, of going back and in our minds, reflecting upon the day that you walked into the building. It's been a journey. And you have met people along the way that has become your family. In fact, you spend most of your time with them than you do your real family, in many cases. Today, I want us to reflect back on the time that you came here and what life has brought you and the changes that has been made in the last 30 years. And we've seen a lot of changes in the last 30 years. We've seen a whole lot of changes in this city in the last 20 years. This is not the same city that I walked into the workhouse when it was a real workhouse. In 1974, things have changed. I have reached a point in my journey of all of those folks that I worked with, and we were a small group back in those days. We became family, and they have been my family. I have one good friend that I have known for 50 years that's in the hospital today, and he's in pretty bad shape. And then I had another friend of mine that I'd known for 50 years. It's been about 2 years now, and she slipped away, and I still carry her phone number in my phone because she's still there to me. There's a book that I read, and it's written by many authors. And one of the authors in this book has a whole chapter, and he talks about government. And he was writing his friend who was complaining about the government. And we all have done that. But the government is here for a purpose. The government was designed for the purpose of serving the people that are part of that government and serving the constituents of that government. This person was pretty hot in the chapter, and he said, get over the fact that the government is there. You're in it and you work for it, so therefore you are a servant to that government. Then he got to complaining about what the government did or didn't do. And And the author told him, said, you just need to sit down and be quiet because the government is there for a purpose, and the purpose is for the betterment of the community. He really got hot and heavy about the police department. And he told them to chill out because he said they are there for a purpose. And he said, if you ain't doing nothing wrong, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But he addressed a lot of the issues that we face every day. We would not be able to survive in many cases without the police department, without the fire department, without those folks who answer the phone and give you directions about what you're needing to do. We've got those good folks that I know a whole lot about that work in the lockup and keep them that's unruly out off the streets. You may think I am insignificant, but if you show up for work and have a right spirit and connect with the people that you work with, you are doing exactly what needs to be done. And we are thankful for those folks who started the journey 30 years ago and is still here. Is that not right? Shake your head, yes. Now look to the person next to you and say to them, I'm glad to see you today. Now turn back around to them and say, you ain't changed a bit. Now, after we done told that tale, we need to pray about it. Mighty God, we love you this morning, and we thank you for your continuous grace over this group of people. We're thankful that we live in America. We're thankful that we live in this city. We're thankful because you have everything under control. Lord, we may not agree or disagree among ourselves, but we do trust that you have it all where it needs to be. We're thankful for those that hold positions of authority in this city. And help every one of us who are a part of this city and a part of this Metro family be a faithful person to this government. We ask that you direct us and lead us and guide us in the days ahead. We are living in some very crucial, disturbing times. We must rely on you. You are our only hope today. Never, ever let us lose the fact that we, as a people, must be pleasing to you. Give us grace today that we'll make it through another day. We ask you to touch those that are not here and part of this celebration today for whatever reason. We also are thankful for the provisions that's been made for us to share and break bread together after this meeting, from the farm to the table and every hand that has prepared it. We ask it all in the name of the one that loves us, and everybody in the house says, Amen.
Thank you, Ron, for those wonderful and supportive words and praise. It is now my honor and great pleasure to introduce Mayor Freddie O'Connell.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see you, and you haven't changed a bit. Thank you, Director Hall, and I know we have so many of our department heads, many of whom are elected officials, with us today, and it is so great to be able to gather this morning to celebrate these terrific accomplishments. Ron identifies this as a period of reflection, and I think that's true, although when I got this email from Shannon last week, I thought she was congratulating me because I have finally celebrated 1 year as a Metro employee. But that puts it all into perspective for me, to know how many people we will celebrate today who have devoted a lifetime to this city, because this is acts of commitment and excellence. It's a moment to stop and reflect that I think not only does our incredible HR team, but all the leaders in this room who have been a part of this journey in many ways themselves for a long time see that, see the commitment, see the accomplishments. And so I'm here really just to say thank you, because this is, again, you heard the reflection on the fundamental role of government, our opportunity to serve this city. It has been wonderful to see so many acts of courage, but just also simple acts of service that occur on a regular basis. And this work is fundamentally what makes people know that they can be happy and safe in the city of Nashville and choose to call it home. And so today we'll be recognizing long-term dedicated Metro government employees with 30 years or more of service in those important 5-year bands of milestones. We're honoring 89 Metro employees who met these milestones for 2024, and many of them are attending this morning with a spouse or close family member. 2 of those honorees are celebrating their 50th year of service to Metro. One of those, of course, is Rosie Hayes, who, when I was just a part-time Metro employee over the past few years, was both the mother and the boss of the Metro Council office. So, Rosie, thank you especially for what you have offered to this city for 50 years. That's incredible. So we'll get to the full story in just a minute, but on that point about how much commitment this is, if you're here related to one of our award recipients as a spouse or a sibling, as a child, a parent, or even just a close friend, would you stand if you are able today? Yes. Anyone who has made this type of commitment knows that this is very difficult to do without support. And fortunately, we have a great workforce that supports one another. But when we have family and friends along with us for the journey, there's a recognition of sacrifice. So thank you all for being a part of this as well. And again, I can't say enough thanks to the leaders that I get to work with every day who ensure that we have this great workforce. We're showing up for the people who show up every day. And I know that every day that I walk into City Hall, I think about how my actions impact the city. What am I doing that makes this city a better place to live, work, and play? And none of that work is possible without the level of commitment we're celebrating today, making Nashville a better place to live, and that is across 1 year, but then eventually reaching 30 years, maybe even 50 years, how we do this, day by day, year by year. It is incredible to be building a better Metro with all of you. So having this be a recognition of many departments with the mayor's office participating, it's one of the most special days of the year to me because it is the reflection of the commitment to a city over generations. So thank you all for being a part of it. I am excited to celebrate today's honorees. And Shannon, thank you so much for helping organize this today. It's great to be with you.
So for today's awards, we are going to call each department up one by one. Your department lead will join the mayor, and then we will call you up individually. I will ask that our honorees today, when we call up your department, if you can just come down this side, we will have you come join, and then we'll have a photograph made with the mayor. So with that, I think we are going to start with the assessor of property. I believe we have who we need here. Maybe not. Is that? I think we'll wait on that, so that's okay. We'll start with Circuit Court. Our first honoree is Deborah Hennessy with 35 years of service. Sandra Perryman with 30 years of service. Mary Stevens with 30 years of service. And Kimberly Wolf with 30 years of service. County Clerk. That's okay. We're celebrating Anita Taylor with 35 years of service. Criminal Court Clerk. Our first honoree is Amy Rooker with 30 years of service. And John Hupka with 45 years of service. Emergency management. And we're honoring Scott Harris with 30 years of service. And Chief Swan, if you'll stay with us, we're going to do the fire department next. Our first honoree is Teresita Burks with 30 years of service. Jonna Lee with 35 years of service. Samuel McPherson Jr. with 40 years of service. And Chris Newsom with 30 years of service. General Services. We're honoring Terry Adkins with 40 years of service. And Harold Fulton with 30 years of service. General Sessions. Our first honoree is Kenneth Connell with 30 years of service. Gina Fox with 40 years of service. And Melanie Taylor with 30 years of service. Health Department. Our first honoree is Jeffrey Baugh with 40 years of service. And Sharonda Broughton with 30 years of service. Human Resources. I know. I'll be pulling double duty here. And I hate that I made our honoree go all the way around. And we are honoring Janet Simmons Trotter with 30 years of service. Next will be Metro Action Commission. Our first honoree is Haveron Boyd with 30 years of service. Gina Hunter with 35 years of service. Rochelle Robertson with 30 years of service. And Tony Wansley with 30 years of service. Metro Council. And we're honoring Roseanne Hayes Shacklet with an amazing 50 years of service. Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure. Our first honoree is George Haynes Jr. with 30 years of service. Byron Macklin with 35 years of service.
These are your snow plowers.
and Paula Underwood with 40 years of service. Metro Parks. Our first honoree is John Holmes Jr. with 40 years of service. Jason Osteen with 30 years of service. Mark Watkins with 30 years of service. Metro Police Department. Our first honoree is Alma Brady with 40 years of service. Christopher Brennan with 30 years of service. Jacqueline Cockrell with 30 years of service. Luana Coleman with 30 years of service. Luann Corcoran with 30 years of service. Tiffany Hansen with 30 years of service. Timothy Hargrove with 40 years of service. Samuel Brian Johnson with 30 years of service. Sandra Phillips with 30 years of service. Kelvin Lusk with 30 years of service. Ken Mahoney with 30 years of service. Matthew Pilkus with 30 years of service. Yolanda Reynolds with 30 years of service. Charles Retzky with 30 years of service. Michael Thomas with 30 years of service. Almos Thompson with 30 years of service. And Tony Turner with 30 years of service. Register of Deeds. Our first honoree is Marilyn Erickson with 30 years of service. And Tammy Frazier with 30 years of service. Sheriff's Office. Our first honoree is Dan Gargas with 30 years of service. And Samantha Hutton with 30 years of service. State Trial Courts. Honoring Ronell Griffin with 30 years of service. Metro Water Services. Our first honoree is Danny Ankenbauer with 40 years of service. Sandra Derrick with 35 years of service. Lumar Jones with 35 years of service. Martin Mast with 40 years of service. Gregory Knowles with 40 years of service. Daniel Reisner with 30 years of service. Lillian Stevenson with 30 years of service. Mindy Thomason with 35 years of service. And Joseph Welch with 30 years of service. Assessor of Property. Our first honoree is Jacqueline Ridgway with 35 years of service. And Christy Scott with 30 years of service. Juvenile Court. Our first honoree is Alan Calhoun with 30 years of service. Sharon Denise Rancorn with 30 years of service. And last but certainly not least, Dana Wolf with 30 years of service. And if everyone would join me in another really large round of applause. We are so very honored that you have been with us on this journey, and many of you continuing with us on this journey. Thank you for everything that you do every day. As we wrap up, I welcome you to please join us, you and all of your guests, for a breakfast buffet behind us. We would love for you to stay, eat, visit with each other. If you need to take a plate with you, that's fine too. But thank you for everything you do, and thank you so much for joining us today.